A Summer 23 trip report from Japan on today's Milenomics² podcast.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sam Simon.
And I'm Robert Dwyer.
And this is the Milenomics² podcast, no annual fee edition.
If you're not subscribed to the full Milenomics² podcast, you're missing out on a deeper dive into topics like the following. We're going to talk about your trip to Japan. You just got back within the past 24 hours, maybe a little bit of jet lag, we'll see, but welcome back to the States after a 2-week trip to Japan.
Thank you, Robert. Yeah, wow, 2 weeks. It felt long, I will say that. It did feel long, and it does feel good to be home.
You like the longer vacation, right? I mean, I'm a 1 week max guy, and you like the nice long vacation. And
I do.
There were phases to this trip, right? It wasn't like you just stayed in Tokyo for 14 nights. But let's start there. What are the parameters of this trip? Is this your first time to Japan? I know you've flown some Japanese airlines, but I know it's the first time with family, but you've never set foot or you never exited the airport in Japan before. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So this was our first time there, and this was the trip that I think it's 2 times, maybe 3 times we planned this trip, and it got canceled. And I know a lot of people had that same situation happen, during COVID or that summer 2020. I think, Robert, you might have been the last person that I know that got into Japan right before everything happened in 2020. And you actually were able to come back again this year in 2023 as well. So I congratulate you on, really getting those 2 trips in. And this being our first trip, we had some ideal places we wanted to see. We wanted to visit Kyoto, the old capital. We wanted to go to Hiroshima. My wife definitely wanted to do that. She's kind of a World War II history buff. And then we wanted to get some kind of beach in because it's summer in Japan, and everybody cautioned us and said, wow, it's going to be really warm. And so we said, let's lean into that. And so there were quite a few options on the table. And even in planning this in prior years, we had different islands that we ended up looking at, and this year we settled on going to Ishigaki Island, which I think is the southernmost island in Japan that you could really stay at. There are some maybe further south day trips from there, and then we tied it off with a few nights in Tokyo, and along the way a lot of things were planned, Robert. So I'm back, and I can say that almost everything went off without a hitch, which was really fantastic. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, it takes a lot more to plan. Not just 14 days, but so many different destinations within a country. If I look at my visits to Japan, it seems like a very small place because all we did was go to Tokyo and Kyoto. Second time, we just went to Tokyo and we had plenty of things to do there for a week. But, with trains and airplanes, and you look at Ishigaki Island, I mean, to me, it looks like it's off the coast of Taiwan.
Yeah.
It's, for the distance from there to Sapporo, up Hokkaido, I mean, that is... How long is that flight? Like, is it as big as getting across the United States? I mean, it's a really long, narrow country.
It is a long flight, yeah. And I think it's one of the longest domestic routes, the Ishigaki to Tokyo flight. It's just under 3 hours, though, and I'll tell you, it went by quick, really quick. And let's just get into Kyoto, because it's somewhere we've both been. And, I stayed there 5 nights, Robert, but I really think I could have stayed there 50 nights. I mean, I love that city. Maybe
wow.
More than Tokyo? I think more than Tokyo.
Get out of here.
Yeah, Robert. Yeah, no, I don't like a lot of people. It's not a high-rise city. I mean, there are some tall buildings there, but as soon as you walk off that main strip and you're in like kind of those back areas, you feel like you're transported back in time. And I love that feeling. I thought it was a really nice city. And a great place for us to get situated. We flew direct, Los Angeles to Osaka, and there's 2 airports in Osaka, and neither of them are close to Kyoto at all. I mean, I think that's one of the big takeaways from this trip is that things always take longer than they should when you're on vacation in a new city and somewhere that you're not familiar with. And maybe if the trip was shorter, we would have had almost more patience for that, I think, or more understanding of that. But with this long trip, all of those small, like micro time wasters just start building up. And after a while, you're just like, I'm tired. The first struggle is, how do you get to Kyoto from Osaka Airport? Mm-hmm. Which is not, like, all of these airports are like on islands in the middle of nowhere. Like, you can just tell they're landfill, because when you land, in every direction there's water, like, so we get off, and this is the classic story that we talk about all the time, Robert. What's the best way to get to or from an airport? And I think,
what does the word best mean in that context? The most luxurious, the most convenient, the cheapest? I think what people are really asking for there is, what is the best normal way to, what's the most common value-minded way to get from point A to point B? Is that maybe a better way we should phrase that in the future?
Maybe, but I'm here to say that multiple times on this trip reflected on our decision, and our decision was to book a car. One of the invaluable tools of this trip was Klook.com. Robert, it came out of nowhere. I've never heard of Klook.com. Have you?
No, I think if I go to look at FanDuel to think what the hidden win from Japan was, I didn't know it was going to be Klook.
Right? Yeah. But Klook, sold us our Universal tickets, which I've covered on another show. That was a huge nightmare. Getting them without Klook is impossible, I think. But just 2 days before we left, I went, I'm not going to be able to put this together on the transit. I'm going to be tired. Your words, and we should probably link to your last trip report from Japan, where you land and you're getting chewed up by this transit system that's foreign, and the credit card issues, and all of what you told me helped, Robert, when I made the decision to book a car. And boy, I'll tell you, we were not that tired. And our immigration issues that you had were not there. There was no line. The QR codes that you discussed were really important to have and did save us some time and were used by the Osaka airport that we were at. But when we got our bags, cleared customs, and walked out and saw our driver standing there, and I had no more brain power had to be used by me. And the kids, they were able to just take a nap in the car on this 95-minute drive from the airport to the hotel. And then, Robert, a couple days later, I reversed this to go to Universal Studios, and I'll talk about it in a minute or two. But wow, like I said, reflecting on that decision, that was absolutely the right decision, because it was late at night in a foreign city, in a system that I was actually transiting from one big city to another. Would not have gone smoothly at all with luggage and everybody, so that was the right decision. And that gets us into Kyoto about 9:00 at night. And the timing of that flight was great. It was an afternoon flight here in LA. It landed there in the early evening. And then by the time we got in, checked into the hotel, and got situated, everybody was pretty much ready to go to sleep and then hit the ground running the next morning.
Yeah, even the flights from the East Coast tend to arrive in the afternoon. It's about 12 to 14 hours, depending on the direction here from Boston to Tokyo. What is the flight time from LA to Osaka?
It was about 12 and a half hours, yeah. I'm sorry. It was 11 and a half. It was 11 and a half.
Okay, yeah, still. It's significantly closer from the West Coast, but it's not 6 hours closer. It's not like you have to fly through LA to get to Tokyo when you kind of go north and over Alaska practically to get up there. So it's not close no matter how you slice it, but it is closer from the West Coast than the East Coast.
Yeah, and the flight out was pretty uneventful, But I'm in Kyoto, Robert. I'm checked into this hotel. We booked these Mimaru hotels, which are they're called apartment hotels. Initially I thought they are a Japanese brand, but I initially thought that they catered to Japanese people moving about the country. But everybody in this hotel was an American, I felt like. In
really?
Kyoto, Robert. Yeah. You get in the elevator and everybody's like, "Hey, how's it going?" And I'm like, "I came out here to practice my Japanese. Like, I'm not getting any practice in here." So I never heard of the brand. I never heard of these hotels, but apparently they're getting out there. The hotel was 5 years old, the one we stayed at in Kyoto. They're celebrating their 5th anniversary. Everything seemed brand new, though. And, you get 3 years of no travel probably in the middle there. So relatively new, and had a washer dryer in the unit. It was about 425 square feet.
Okay.
Not huge, but comfortable enough. And we didn't really spend a ton of time in that room. And we did have some stumbles the first day. We had a pretty packed itinerary in Kyoto. A lot of tours. We wanted to see a lot of places. That city's just full of a lot of history, a lot of beautiful shrines and castles. And I had booked through the Chase Ultimate Reward portal a bunch of tours, actually, Robert. A full day tour. No, a half day tour, I think it was, but it was a private tour. And I thought, this is perfect. The first day we're there, we're going to do this half-day tour. I'm going to have a local. I can ask him all kinds of questions. He can teach me how everything works. And I was, I'm a genius. All the TripAdvisor tours, they're all on Chase Ultimate Rewards Travel, and I can get 1.5 cents per. ultimate reward on there. And I'm going to do this like a genius, Robert. And it completely backfired on me.
Oh, no.
Here's how. Here's how. I booked it just maybe 3 or 4 days before we left. You get a confirmation email. And as part of the booking process, it had a pretty generic form. It said, hey, pick the hotel you're staying at so we know where to meet you. I'm staying at a pretty obscure hotel. I get it. And so it said other, and then you put the name of the hotel. I put the name of the hotel under other. And I get a booking confirmation, and I said, oh, great, I'm fine. Well, we land. I'm in Kyoto. It's like 9 o'clock at night, and I go, I got to check like what time we're going to meet this person and where and all that stuff. And I go to pull up the information from the confirmation email, and I click the link, and it says, oh, no, this is expired.
Expired.
And I go, what? Yeah, expired. So here I am. It's like 9:30 at night. Call it Chase Ultimate Reward Travel Portal, and
oh no, this sounds bad already.
I'm just wasting time at this point. Oh, you've got to call the Chase Sapphire Reserve line. I'm not going to call the Chase Sapphire Reserve line. And the lady goes, no, that nicely. She says, they were just getting you off the line. There's nothing I can do. So
you're on your own, kid.
Yeah, I dig into it a little bit more, and I'm getting a little frustrated at this point. TripAdvisor owns Viator, and apparently these are Viator tours. We've been talking about Viator for like 10 years, Robert, you and I.
Yeah.
And it used to be the place to go to get tours, and I used to enjoy that these tours were bookable. But we've come to a point now where Viator offers the tour, and then TripAdvisor picks it up, and then Chase Ultimate Reward Travel Portal mimics whatever's on TripAdvisor, but there's no back and forth on the communication. And so I called Viator at one point from Kyoto, and they said, well, here's what happened. The tour operator was trying to get a hold of you, and they sent you a bunch of messages in your Viator portal. And I went, there's no Viator portal. I didn't book with you guys.
Oh, my gosh.
And then he starts kind of clicking around. He goes, I see what happened. Yeah, he goes, there was no way for those messages to get to you. So since they couldn't get any word back to you, and none of the information apparently that I put in the Chase portal made it to the booking company or to the tour company. So, kind of a perfect mess. And he says, the refund will be coming back. And sure enough, the refund did come back without me interacting at all.
Yeah, but that's not what you wanted.
That's not what I wanted. I wanted a half-day private tour.
Wait, is this the ultimate Chase Ultimate Rewards cash out?
No, it's not. It came back as points. I thought for a second it might. I know. I was excited for a moment after an hour of my time. Here's how you turn an hour of your time into $200 worth of Chase Ultimate Rewards. Yeah.
I'm so annoyed on your behalf, though. I mean, everybody wants to start a business that does nothing. Airbnb, Uber. Yeah. They just want to be in the middle of all these transactions and collecting a percentage of all of the action. So then you take Viator and then TripAdvisor and then Chase and just hook it all up and think, oh, it's it's going to be a great system here. Well, just people redeem their points and we'll pay you and you pay you and you pay you, and it doesn't work at all. Yeah. And there's no communication between you and the vendor. There's no communication from the vendor back to you, and the thing blows up. And Chase is like, "Well, here's your money back." Well, we'll just hope that 90% of them work. I mean, it's really irresponsible on their part.
It is, and look, there's billions, millions of bookings probably happen every year without any issue. And had I stayed at a major hotel that was on this drop-down list, I'm sure the guy would have showed up in the morning at that hotel. But I don't think there was a way for the information that I typed under other to get to them. And that was the issue. And I booked it really close in, and I assumed it was going to work. I think that I could have gotten the reservation information. But here's a great A/B test on that, Robert, because I also booked that Klook.com car to pick us up at the airport. And the guy texted me on my WhatsApp without me interacting at all, got the information from the booking, texted me while I was still here in Los Angeles and said, I will see you tomorrow. Huh. And so... it's doable. It's definitely doable, but it was a bad stumble out the gates. And it actually had further issues, I think, because my goal was for this person, this local tour guide, to explain the rail system to us, the transit system to us, right? And that didn't happen. And so I was left scrambling with just-in-time information kind of on the ground to figure out how this all worked. In Tokyo, we had 0 issues. And we were there much way 2 days, 2.5 days versus 5 nights in Kyoto. But something about the system in Kyoto, the signage wasn't as good. The on the ground markings weren't as good. We weren't as good. I'll take some ownership of I'm not a great train person. We don't deal with that here in LA very much. So I had to get into that mode and that mindset. But Robert, when we went to Universal Studios, I think the subtext of that day at Universal, you could have written it as like National Lampoon's Japanese Vacation. And it would have been literally like the script to the first National Lampoon Vacation movie, because it took us almost 2.5 hours to go from Kyoto to Universal Studios in the morning.
Well, a couple things there. I mean, if there was a Japanese vacation, I would pay money to see that in a big way. I would help produce it in the first place. But the whole Kyoto to Osaka, and Universal Studios is close to Osaka, right?
Yeah, it's in Osaka, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, Kyoto is close enough to Osaka that they kind of seem like you can do things from one to the other. But I'm kind of getting the feeling that maybe those are separate entities. They seem close on the map. You look at it's kind of 45 minutes, but from LA, you look at something that's 25 miles and it's an hour and a half to get there sometimes, right? So is that what we're experiencing here? That maybe we shouldn't conflate those two cities, spend time in them independently, you think? Or what happened with the train? Why did it take 2.5 hours to get there?
I don't, it's a lot of small mistakes, right? So the tour was canceled on Monday. And so instead we did our own thing. We were very close to one of the castles. We went to the castle. We made it to a couple other sites in the evening. We took some trains. But even in Kyoto on Monday night when we took the trains, when you were transiting from one train line to another, in my head, I'm thinking like, well, this is like taking the metro here or the subway in New York, or where you're going from one line to another. But no, you're physically going from like one train company's station to another train company's station sometimes. Mm-hmm. And they're linked, but they're linked in like the most weird kind of obscure way. And Google Maps underground is not giving you a reliable GPS signal, and you're walking in circles. And if it was just me and my wife, it wouldn't be a big deal. Mm-hmm. But one of those big takeaways, I got a 4-year-old and an 8-year-old, when something says it's a 7-minute walk or a 4-minute walk, they're assuming you're a normal, able-bodied adult making that 4 or 7-minute walk.
Yeah.
A 7-minute walk with 2 kids who are frustrated and don't understand that, like, this is a different way of traveling and, this is how we're going to do this. 7 minutes could turn into 14, 20, 30 minutes of agony when you're running in circles and this is the wrong way, and you put your ticket in the ticket machine and then you realize you're the wrong place, and then you leave and then the ticket doesn't. I mean, every little thing that amplifying the stress really just adds to the aggravation and they make more mistakes. And that's what happened on the way to Universal Studios, I think, in the morning. Was we're transiting through all these different lines, and there probably is a really easy way to do it. Take a cab to Kyoto Central Station and then get on like the Shinkansen to Osaka, and 15 minutes later, and then transfer to the Universal Studios line, or take another, but one of the frustrating parts of relying on Google Maps, Robert, is it doesn't have any historical knowledge of what you know and what you've done. And so it's feeding you real-time information about what the best, again, there's that word, the best way to get somewhere is. And it's making that assumption as if you know the whole system really well.
Yeah.
So like, here's a great example. If it was me and I was building a transit app, or even if I'm telling someone, I'd say, look, here's what you should do. You should do this, then this, then this to get there. And then regardless of what, the app tells you to do, just do the same thing in reverse to come home. Mm-hmm. And that would have probably made things easier. Like, to bookend the trip, we got when we got to Tokyo, we had to get to our hotel. Super easy, painless, seamless. We didn't make any mistakes. And then when we were going to go back to the airport at the end of the trip, Google had this convoluted idea on how to get us there with all. I said, no, let's just do what we did. I don't even need this app. Let's do what we did in reverse. It has to work. Maybe it's 10 minutes longer or $2 more expensive, or whatever the reason that Google Maps is not telling me to do it. I just don't trust it anymore to tell me the best way to get somewhere, because the best way for me with 2 kids is the way with the least amount of stress, and that stress on the way to Universal Studios was brutal, Robert. I mean, really, it was. And
I'm surprised you had a good time there. Maybe I'm foreshadowing. It seems like you guys had a great time there, and it worked out great. But after 2.5 hours on the first ride of the day, I can imagine that spirits were not high, and endurance was diminished as a result of your adventure getting there.
Yeah, great example of one of these stress points. There are express trains and there's local trains. And an able-bodied normal person will make it to the train that Google thinks you're going to make it to, right? You're 10 minutes away. The next train leaves in 15 minutes. You're going to get on that train. Well, it took us, we had to stop. We had to find a toilet. The kids needed a snack, and then you're like 20 minutes. And you go, well, it's the line that it says to get on. It's going the direction it says to go. We should get on this train, I think. And then you realize you got on a local train.
Yeah.
And it's going to take another 30 minutes. And so then, that's just, okay, then you go, should we get off?
Right.
No, because,
who knows?
Right. And so it really was the very first National Lampoon's Vacation movie, Robert, because at the end of it, we're at an amusement park.
Yeah.
And we're at an amusement park, but we're at an amusement park with express passes. And I will say, if we didn't have the express pass at Universal Studios Japan, we probably would have just said, forget it and gone home. Mm-hmm. Because there wasn't a single line that was under 80 minutes that was worth riding. The kids were completely fried of this adventure at this point, which, at first it's an adventure and then it's not an adventure anymore on the train. So being able to walk in and go, guys, we nailed it. I mean, we really nailed it. We gave ourselves so much time. We only had 5 minutes to wait until our first ride on our express pass.
Cool.
So we walked over there, walked up to the ride, and unfortunately, my 4-year-old was too short to get on the ride. He couldn't make the cut, So we decided to try to pivot. And that's one of those bright points on this, Robert, where everything I had read said, no. These are like, the express pass is very specific. You're going to ride this ride at this time, or this ride at this time, but you can't go outside of what's on your pass. And I'm here to say that's not true. They were very accommodating. I walked up to a ride right next to the ride that my son couldn't get on, and they also had an express pass line, and I explained the situation, and they said, oh, yeah, no, that's fine. You guys can all ride this as long as the time is still the time, right? So there wasn't any flexibility in the time, and in fact, they have to scan your barcodes in their little system, but they were able to override the ride. And so we immediately get on a ride, and man, everybody's energized. And then the timing of the express pass was perfect because it's walk over to another ride, boom, get on another ride. And I'm telling you, Robert, I'm Clark Griswold. I'm walking around the park. I've got John Candy showing me around, basically, and we're going on everything we want to go on. It's
you didn't
fantastic.
have to hold him up or anything, though. All you had to do was buy the express pass through Klook a month in advance through a lot of stress, and all the hard work was paid for ahead of time. But you're not a big theme park guy, so maybe give some background to that people may not listen to the paid show. This is kind of a departure for you, and probably something not your first thing that you were thinking of doing. You didn't go to Disney Sea. You didn't. No. Why did you choose to go to Universal Studios there when there's one, an hour away from your house in California?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's not Universal or a bunch of other things. It's, tourist thing or another tourist thing or another tourist thing. And so It felt right, and the option to skip the lines appealed to me with the Express Pass because I'm not a completionist either. Robert, I don't care. I did 6 hours at Universal Studios Japan and I was fine with that. I was ready to go. Our Express Pass, we did our Express Pass stuff. Let's go. I don't need to explore. I think I just enjoyed the experience and watching my kids have a great time. And being that dad that was able to make it happen, especially after the real trouble getting there. It was just enough time at the park where the kids weren't tired or burned out or anything. And I think when you're a local, like I go to Disney here, or if I went to Universal here, I'd get there early. I'd want to make the whole day count. And over there, it was like, it's like a sunk cost too, Robert. Where I'm like, I already spent all the money on this, so might as well stay here as long as I want to stay here and leave, so that I don't have a miserable day tomorrow,
Just one thing as a little more of a theme park enthusiast than you. The Super Mario World is, I think, a novel thing over there that we are just getting here in the States. Did you get to experience that?
I did, Robert. And
was it good?
I had originally wanted to start the day there, and one of the issues with these Klook passes is you can't pick your times. And we ended the day there. And what a great way to end the day, Robert.
Oh, cool.
Disney has to watch out because, man, Universal has some IP. Do they own Universal? They don't own Universal Studios, right?
No, separate, yeah.
How hot is Super Mario right now? And they've got, all the IP, and the build out is crazy, Robert. Just crazy levels of detail. The Mario Kart ride, you're inside Bowser's castle, and my daughter's freaking out, and, she plays a lot of Mario Kart, and all of these things are there, and, you're supposed to wait in the line for like 2 hours. So they've got all this stuff for you to look at. And we're just breezing by all these people and just kind of snapping pictures of all this stuff to look at later. But that world is impressive, I would say. To a kid, you can, the question mark blocks work. You can hit them. And, everything is super cartoony, and the characters are there walking around, and you walk through Peach's castle, and then you come out, and literally you're in another world.
Yeah.
And it really was a great way to end the day. And so, we end the day, and then we've got this crazy travel back. And I said, no. I know how to do this now. We're going to do the exact same thing we did in reverse, and it's going to work great.
No, I can't stand another 2.5 hours. Please, no.
Well, Robert, because you would think, right? We're going to do the exact same thing we did in reverse. We know what we're doing now. We get on the very first train, Robert, and it stops, and apparently that some train on that loop, and it's the only loop to get out of Universal Studios, some train somewhere on that loop hit a passenger on the platform.
Talk about the most un-Japanese thing to happen.
Probably hit some American, right? Yeah. So we're standing there and we're waiting for information, and the information is coming in Japanese, and so everybody all of a sudden just starts walking away.
That's the international sign. You don't need to know the language to know this train's not going anywhere.
I was like, this is bad. Yeah, this is bad. And the guy says, it's going to be maybe an hour. We figure everything out. And I go, well, what am I supposed to do? He goes, oh, it's easy. It's about a 7-minute walk. Everybody says 7-minute walk. 7-minute walk, you got to go get the subway. Then when you get the subway, I go, forget it. I get the phone out. I hit the Uber app. I get a cab to take us to to Osaka Station, right? Because I said, that's where I want to get.
You're too far to catch an Uber back home. I would I would give anyone my credit card just to take me home at this point.
I thought about it, right? But it would have been like $200, and it was just
like Boston to New York or something like that. It's just, I'm tired of the system. Just take me home.
I mean, I really thought about it, but my point was like, if I can get to Osaka Station, it's one train.
Yeah.
It's one train, and then I'm done, right? Take another cab from that train station and be done. And you want to go to Osaka Station, and where do you want to get dropped off?
Yeah.
I don't know. Where would you get dropped off? I don't know. So the guy drops us off. He drops us off like way on the other side of the station, and nothing is like looking the same to me as it did in the morning. And so then we're walking through and trying to find where to go. And fortunately, it was the issue with the train and the issue with getting dropped off by the cab on the other side of the station. But once we got on the train we were supposed to get on, everything was fine. We got back. It was just this unfortunate situation of the train hitting someone and having an issue. And that happened again in Tokyo. It did. Wow. We saw a train train line was delayed for a broken window or a broken door, I think it was. And so it happens. And I think you have to build in the idea that, this is one of those misconceptions, I think, Robert, where everyone says, the reliability is so high. Probably the reliability on the Shinkansen is very high, or the reliability during rush hour is very high, but no system is perfect. And, I don't have a lot of data points, but I saw 2 trains that I was trying to get on broken down over the course of 2 weeks. And so I would say be ready for anything and plan that things could happen. That's one of those big takeaways. Towards the end of the trip, we were ready for that. The beginning of the trip, I wasn't ready for that.
Totally different bits of friction than I ran into. I think one thing that's a bit unusual is the way you started this trip in Osaka, Kyoto, as opposed to Tokyo. I don't know. I just feel like it's that's a little bit of zigging when other people zag coming into the smaller part of the country. Yeah. And I found more issues with language barrier the further I got away from Tokyo and the further you get away from a city center. The difficulty I had, a lot of people, they are thinking about going to Japan. They're worried about the character set. They're worried about the language. They're worried about the food. We're worried about having a hard time getting around. And some of those things came to fruition here, as we're hearing. But I think in the end, there is a lot of order to the country, and you can figure things out, but the bullet that gets you is not the bullet that got me, and vice versa. So it's almost like the best thing you can do is prepare yourself and your expectations that it's going to be an adventure and something's going to come up. And it's same that we had my nephew visiting this weekend. I was thinking the same thing, something's going to happen this weekend that's out of the ordinary, but you're here at our house. It's not going to be that crazy, that foreign. Here, you're in a foreign country. You're exposed to a whole different culture instead of, just that, like you say, knowing which side of a massive train station to be dropped off at when you don't even know what you're looking for is the next step thing. It's not something you typically deal with in your day-to-day adventures in the Los Angeles area, I would imagine.
No, anybody listening, there's a similar example in whatever major city here. It's like, drop me at LAX. Oh, would they drop you at Terminal 1 and you got to go to Terminal 7? That's an adventure right there. But, my big limiting factor was the kids, Robert, because, if it was myself and my wife, we have a lot of appetite for these types of situations and the stresses, and kids are kids, right? And there's like 1,000 people walking around, and they want to talk to you about all this cool stuff that they're like seeing, and you're like, look, we need to focus, right? Like, we got to get on this train. It's not about all that stuff. One of the things that I didn't hear a lot about, and I didn't read a lot about, was using cabs, and that was our saving grace, Robert. Was cabs.
The best thing in Tokyo is the cabs that ever tells you to take the train instead. Hidden secret.
Yes, the greatest thing in Kyoto was the cab system. Greatest thing in Hiroshima, in Tokyo for us, was the cabs, because little kids, you're basically dealing with, I think I tweeted this out at one point, you're dealing with someone with like limited mobility. So imagine, right? Like, imagine the person in your family that has the most trouble with mobility. Maybe it's an older person. Maybe it's someone who has, mobility issues. And you tell them, oh, all you have to do is walk 8 blocks. They're going to go, no, what other options are there, right? Like, all you have to do is walk 8 blocks to get to the trains. And then, inside the train system, there's a lot of like 7-minute walks. They would go, I need something that's not that. And the solution is cabs.
Yeah.
And, it was one of the other things was it was really hot too. And so it was really nice, Robert, to be able to press a button on your phone, an ice cold cab shows up.
It's cold.
And for ice cold, Robert, some of these cabs 19 degrees, inside. I don't know what that is, but it was cold.
I know now it's cold.
And right. And not take it all the way, because that started getting that would have gotten super expensive, even in a city like Kyoto. A cab to the bamboo forest, like $50-$60 maybe.
Yeah.
But a cab to the train or the bus, and the bus system in Kyoto was fantastic and super easy to use. And that's one of those things that everybody's focused on the train and the JR pass and all this stuff. The bus system in Kyoto was way, way better, because first of all, you're above ground, so you're watching the city. You're seeing the sights. You're going, oh, wow, let's go back to that later.
Yeah.
And you're learning like parts of the town. And then, it's all numbers based, and you can kind of see where everything is, and you just get on in the back and get off in the front and pay your fare. And so we used a lot of buses, but we took cabs to those initial points all the time. And, it was a thing we had to do because of the mobility situation. I would rather save those steps to actually go somewhere I wanted to go and use those steps. Like, I'm going to use all my kids' energy to get to the bamboo forest, or I'm going to actually use that energy in the forest to go on the hike I want to go on. Doesn't make sense to do the first thing.
Smart. How did you catch those cabs? You said you touched your phone. Did you use Uber, which in turn resulted in a cab coming to you? Because I remember getting stuck in some situations where Uber really just calls a cab, I think, in most places there. We were in somewhere and we just had to sit around and wait for some guy to drive by in a cab, and he eventually came. But tell us about the Uber to cab. Tell us about the Uber situation there. Is it in limp mode versus what we know of Uber here in the States?
I think it's better than here, Robert, because it is all cabs. There's no random person. There's no, check engine light or any of that. It's the Japanese
The Uber
cabs.
brand is a check engine light, in my experience.
That's right. It is. And you press the button, and it's. I would say it was at its best in Kyoto. In Kyoto, the base cab fare was 450 yen, which is like $3 maybe.
Oh yeah, tell us about the exchange rate real quick. When I was there, it was like 75%, so everything felt like it was a 25% off sale. What's the exchange rate at now?
Like around 70, 71, 72 when I was there. Yeah, it was fantastic.
That really just kind of takes
nice.
you divide by 100, but then you also kind of get 25% off whatever number you're seeing. And if the thing you're buying is less than you're familiar with getting it, for example, a cab ride, it seems like it still seems like the country's on sale a bit.
Absolutely. And one of those, I guess, misconceptions as well. You hear about how one person experiences a place one time and it becomes like true. But, I just had an idea that it was going to be way more expensive than it was. And it was so approachable, so reasonable. There was always a way to trade time for money, which I love, Robert, and a way to find something that fit your budget. And so 14 days, I was nervous, a little nervous because I was thinking like, some of the worst places I've ever traveled expense-wise, like Switzerland or something like that. Like I was thinking like, man, 14 days, if it's like Switzerland expensive, I'm in trouble here.
Yeah.
I'm going to mortgage my house or something. But no, it was good. But yeah, so getting back to the cab situation, you have multiple cab companies, and in Kyoto, Uber has aligned with only one of them. I think it's the MK Cab Company. And so if it was really busy, I think when it started raining one day, it did get delayed enough that we were like, forget it, we're not going to wait for an Uber. But it was so quick. I mean, in most cases, I was waiting 4 minutes or less for a cab. And I don't know if they can see where you're going, but they never once did the whole like, searching, zooming out, trying to find a cab. We're talking like a 1 mile trip. Like, what's that? 15 minutes or less, probably with traffic, and saves us all those steps. And it's different in each city, though. When you get to a new city, it tells you the deal. Like Tokyo, I think I shared it with you later. Tokyo completely, the whole thing's reversed. The cabs, they have a pickup fee through Uber that is separate from the fare, and universally the fare that Uber shows you is just an estimate too with cabs. But in Tokyo, the black cars, I think those are like real Uber cars. And those fares are fixed. And so you can do the whole thing you do here where you go, well, the taxi seems expensive. I'll take the black car. The black car is a little expensive, but there's no pickup fee and there's no unknown meter issue. And so in Tokyo, we took a lot of black cars. And those cars were fantastic, Robert. They got lie flat seats. They got mood lighting. I'm not kidding. They really do. Yeah.
Wow.
They do. Yeah. But each city's a little different. In Hiroshima, the base fare, I want to say, was like almost 750 yen. We had some $25 cab rides to like short places there. That would have added up if I had spent a long time in Hiroshima. So, but yeah, that cab situation. There's another app called Didi. DIDI. Okay. I signed up for it, but I never ended up using it because Uber was so reliable and quick.
Wow. Yeah. No, in Tokyo, the first time we went there, we were there for 2 days. And so we took a bunch of Ubers around and just, or taxis. So just, threw money at it, like, in front of the hotel, pick up a taxi kind of thing. And on this most recent trip, we were in some remote part of Tokyo and we hit the Uber button and nobody ever showed up, searching. So, you always like to Google, does Uber work in whatever country you're going to? And I'm hearing from you that there's not really a Boolean answer to that. In some areas it works differently than others, even within the same country.
Very different.
So, but overall, it's a pretty good way to go. Unfortunately, you couldn't use your Amex credits, right?
No credits. They're tied to a currency. So that was unfortunate, but I want to say all told, including the cab from, the emergency cab from Universal Studios, I probably spent under $150 on cabs over the 14 days. And there wasn't a single day we didn't take a cab except when we were on that island.
Not bad in terms of the overall budget of the trip.
No, and like I said, if I had been like, no cab, never going to take these cabs, we're going to walk everywhere, we would have walked and ridden trains and then walked back and not seen any sights. Yeah. And there were days that we were able to go out 2 times, once in the morning, have everybody come back, take a nap, then go out in the evening and see even more sights. That's completely related to our ability to conserve steps. And I say conserve steps, Robert. We walked like 180,000 steps while we were there. So it's not like we didn't get a lot of walking in. We did. And you just have to be aware of what your limitations are.
That's really smart. And to sum up the steps that way, you talk about people being limited mobility, but you ask them to walk that many thousands of steps that it's just a ton of walking, and you're smart to use it where it's enjoyable, not drudgery. So I like that. You want to pivot to talk about the next stop, Hiroshima?
Definitely. That's one of those cities I think I could have done more time in. I know I could have done more time in. And we took the Shinkansen from there. Kyoto was getting ready for one of these huge festivals, and it was wonderful to watch the festival develop while we were in Kyoto. And it was really nice to leave before like 300,000 people mobbed the streets too.
Yeah.
I watched later on YouTube the video of the actual festival, and I went, that would have been a nightmare for us with 2 kids. It would have been awful. But it made for a busy day at the train station. The first stop from Kyoto is Osaka, and I feel like a lot of people got off the train in Osaka, but it made it difficult to get tickets last minute, actually. And the reason is because of my luggage. Robert, you know I have a love-hate relationship with trains and luggage, right?
That's a recurring source of anxiety for you. I know that.
It is. And, there were these signs all over the system while I was in Kyoto and Osaka saying, if your luggage is big on the Shinkansen, you need to buy a luggage seat. And apparently this is like a new thing. It's like a new regulation they have to try to keep, I think, the luggage situation under control. And sure enough, on the last row of each car, there are luggage seats that you can book.
Okay.
And if you try to book seats, I would never do a non-reserved seat, but if you go to the non-reserved car and you have a large piece of luggage, they can charge you a fee and then put your luggage somewhere, and you got to figure out how to get it and all that nonsense. So instead, they have these luggage seats. And I said, well, that's what I want. I want 3 luggage seats, one for me, one for my wife. My son can sit with us, and one for my daughter. I couldn't get 3 luggage seats in a row on like the next Shinkansen, the next one, the one after that. I eventually gave up. I went to a person. And that's the other thing, right? There's kiosks that do everything, but that person was like 1,000 times more helpful.
I agree.
And she says, I can get you guys on the same train, but I got to move, I got to put you separate seats. And I went, that's fine. That's fine. So she does all her stuff, and she gets us on like the next train. So, I don't think the kiosk would have worked anyway with my credit card. So I would have ended up having to talk to a person anyway, right? That's one of the issues you had, right? Credit card in the kiosk wasn't working.
Absolutely. And the line to talk to the person isn't that long. They just kind of hide the people because they want people, I think, to work through the kiosks. But the complexity of things you have to deal with there are bonkers sometimes, right? You want to stick your passport in? It actually does work. You can stick your passport in. Does it take a credit card? Probably not. You probably need to use some IC card or something like that. Can you use your Google device to? Probably not. You just go to the person. There's no surcharge. Yeah. The line isn't that long. You can talk to a human and work through these complexities. I mean, like luggage seats, like which train to take, how far is it? I think that is a tip that works pretty well there. Go see the person.
Yeah, see the person. The other thing, the IC card is convenient. I get it, Robert. It's very nice, but like for example, you can't buy a child IC card. Right? Yeah. So the process to get a child IC card is insane. It's buy an IC card, bring your passport and your child to a ticket office, and have them convert their. I forget. Bonkers. It wasn't even worth it. I didn't even do it, Robert. I just paid the adult fare. Granted that we talked about the exchange rate being low, but the amount of yen it costs for some of these things, the amount of money isn't even worth it. The IC card costs 500 yen to get. There's a 500 yen deposit. Then when you're done, they charge you 240 yen to pull the cash off the card. I just kept the card. I don't care. I don't want to deal with any of that. That sounds like a nightmare.
Pull the cash off like a bunch of MSers over there.
Right. So exactly, right. So instead, I just made sure I didn't have any money on these cards left. And then who cares about the $3.50, right? I mean, it's time and money are really interchangeable in all countries, but it's really clearly demarcated there. Like, you want to be on the local train, it's going to take you 4.5 days to go to Hiroshima. You want to be on the Shinkansen, it's going to take you to an hour and 45 minutes. Like, they've really figured a way to charge you for time. And I like that. As a person who sees the value of time, I really do like that.
I think the recurring theme that we're seeing here, I'm saying, is that, and I remember it's taking me back to all these little things that we did to save some money. And you read these articles like they're so important. Knowing whether it is a big financial win is super important, but it's tough to make that decision on the fly. Like, you're going from Narita to Central Tokyo, and you're going to go back at the end. There's a deal where if you have a passport and you're going to and fro, it's really a big savings, especially for 4 people. And then you're trading that off your head versus just taking an Uber, and it's pretty far, and nobody does that. And you're just like, but it is a big savings. It makes it worth it to stick the passport to do it that way. Same thing with tourist passes for multi-day Tokyo subway lines. You have to go to a little bit of a quirky place to do it, but they give you a nice map. They're friendly people there. You're talking, but you got to go find that thing. You have to know about it. It's not something that's at every station, but it is a big savings. It's like, on the order of $40 for a family for a 3-day pass or something like that, I would estimate. On the order for the Narita Express, I don't know, $80 or something like that difference. So these are big numbers. But if you're talking about $5 versus $2, it's like, come on, let's just get on with the show.
Robert, it gets to the point where there's articles written about how the IC card saves you money because when you buy tickets, they round up to the nearest 10 yen. Like, what are we talking about? Like, I understand that, like that's okay, right? But like, come on, even even 10 yen. Like, I don't understand, whatever. We're way in the weeds. But I think the other thing is that, like, what anyone else did is not necessarily what you're going to do, right? Like, you got to buy the multi-day pass. Robert, there's no way I used enough trains to make a multi-day pass even worthwhile. I rode 6 trains in Tokyo because I was only there for 2 days. So, but if you're there a week, yeah, sure, everything changes.
Yeah. I was there for a week, and I had 2 kids that were old enough, and were talk a little bit about your just kind of general feeling. We feel like Tokyo and Japan are so safe that our kids are teenagers, boys, and we had subway passes, and we felt comfortable with them going out and exploring the city on their own via train.
Right.
Fantastic.
Right.
I can't think of another country in the world where I would do that, even at the age that they're at. And it was awesome. And so they took dozens of trains while they were out around that time.
Absolutely. Right. And they don't have to worry, and you don't have to worry. Yeah,
exactly. So some things that the pass makes a bunch of sense. The JR Rail Pass being the classic one. I mean, more has been written and thought about on that than probably anything
I'm
in
so
Japan.
glad I haven't really talked much about Japan. We're talking about all this other stuff, but I'm so glad I didn't go in on that. There were a lot of patrons on our Slack that put the reasoning together and said it's just not going to be worth it, especially the situation like you said. We're going into Kyoto and then traveling in this really weird way against the flow, and the price of that is going up, really, really going up quite high in I think October. But the other thing is then it pushes you onto JR trains. And those were not always the best solutions. Here's a great example. In Hiroshima, there were 2 things we wanted to do. One was Miyajima Island. It's an island off of the coast with a really nice gate, famous floating gate. When the tide is high, it appears to be floating in the water. And it's an island full of deer, baby deer and other deer that you can experience. And it's also just a national park. It was really like a great peaceful place. It was very busy around the gate itself. Too many people taking too many pictures. And then 5-minute walk away, you're in the forest with some beautiful waterfalls and those really nice iconic orange bridges kind of crisscrossing over these rivers, and no people. It's like nobody ever made it past the bridge or the gate. Nobody made it past the gate.
The gate, the one that they have at Epcot. That's kind of, it looked exactly the same. It's what you were experiencing there, right?
Yes.
Like a Torii gate kind of thing, but it's huge.
Yeah.
I don't even know if it's called a gate, but okay.
Huge, yeah. And then there's a temple there that everybody was visiting as well, but there's a national park right behind it, and you can climb all the way up. And we didn't have a lot of time. We had 1 day in Hiroshima. We stayed at the Hilton Hiroshima, which is a brand new Hilton hotel. Fabulous. I loved it. I had a little more details in the show notes here, but we had 1 physical day on the ground, whole day on the ground. And if you have the JR Rail Pass, it tells you, the easiest way, here's what you do. You get onto the JR system and you go down, you ride 40 minutes to this Miyajima station, and then you could take a ferry that JR runs from there across. And, I started telling my wife about that, and she goes, no, I already researched it. We take a cab. It takes 10 minutes. There's a high-speed ferry. It costs like $14, and it gets us to the island in 20 minutes. And I went, oh, my God, you just saved me an hour and a half and, probably like 2 misconnects and all the stress of all of this. And, yeah, so when you get a rail pass, it pushes you into a system that you don't necessarily need to be in. Yeah. And I was really appreciative that she was looking at it through a completely different lens and was able to find like that ferry. And the ferry was completely empty. Nobody was on it. And the JR ferry is huge, packed with people, and saved the day. It saved the day because it allowed us later to go to the Peace Park in the same day and fit those 2 things in 1 day. And we would have been destroyed by that hour and a half trip all the way down, and all the way back. 3 hours total sitting in trains and ferries and all this stuff. And instead we walk right on this little boat, and 20 minutes later we're right in downtown Hiroshima. It's nice.
Yeah. Any all-you-can-eat pass that where you would be shelling out incremental dollars that would really, really grind my gears. Like,
painful,
I thought this included all the trains, so I'm paying more for trains. No, I already paid more for trains than I thought was reasonable amount to pay for trains, and I'm paying for more trains. Okay, this is not what I signed up for. So I think you have to be really sure that you're going to get a lot of incremental value over going a la carte on that one. And it sounds like some recent changes have made that even a harder value proposition to eke out.
Yeah, and from afar, it doesn't make a lot of sense. You're thinking like, what do you mean it doesn't include everything? It really didn't include almost anything we did. wouldn't have been included.
Wow.
Really, Robert? Yeah, I would have been upset. So that was nice. But we experienced Peace Park. We had to be a little bit careful, and I appreciate a couple patrons warned us about the age of my kids and some of the experiences in the museum itself. So we didn't go to the museum, but we did experience one of the memorials, and then they had a lot to see and do and pay respects, and the area itself has a couple buildings that you can still see that see the devastation. And I really, really enjoyed that city. I wish I would have spent more time there. And then on the other end, on the like silly kitschy end, we went to one of the cat robot waiter restaurants that my kids got a real big kick out of, and got to experience like high schoolers coming out of, I assume, school and going to that exact same restaurant and mobbing it. And just this like universal, like these 15, 16, 17-year-old kids are exactly the same as every 15, 16, 17-year-old kid. And it was fun. I really enjoyed, like I said, that city. I wish I would have had more time. I found myself asking the exact question we started this show with to the Hilton concierge at the Hiroshima Hotel, Robert, which was, what's the best way to get to Hiroshima Airport? and I caught myself as I asked it to her, and I went, oh man. And she says, well, there's two ways. There's a cab. I'm going to pick you up right here. It's 15,500 yen flat to the airport plus tolls. And I went, okay, that's like, I don't know, maybe $125, right? Mm-hmm. She said, otherwise, there's an airport limousine bus that takes you from the Shinkansen station, and that's $14 a person and half price for kids. And I went, let's roll the dice. This could be a mistake. But I took the airport limousine bus. I took a cab there first. But, man, super easy, super quick. They leave every 20 minutes. You buy the ticket, you walk right on. There's plenty of space for the luggage. Because it's Hiroshima, and I don't think it's as written about place by maybe travel writers, there wasn't a lot of information on that limousine bus. And it was kind of a roll the dice thing. And I'm glad it worked out, Robert, because it was significant savings. Like you said, it has to really save to make sense. And it was taking you to the exact same place. It wasn't like it was going to take me a bus to another thing and I got transferred to a train or anything like that. It was take a cab, spend $12 on the cab, and save $100 that I can use somewhere else on the trip. So Hiroshima Airport Limousine Bus. Highly recommended, Robert.
I think I took a bus from Tokyo Disney Sea to the Narita Airport and thought it was super easy, much easier than the Narita Express. And so I think there's a little bit of a lesson there in terms of if you're trying to get to some obscure Airbnb, that's going to be a harder thing to get to because you're going to have more tentacles hanging off the connections. But if you're going from a Shinkansen station to an airport, everyone's going to the airport. There's no ambiguity about where the airport is. You know where you're going. So yeah, those buses, not so bad. I like that. That's a good tip.
Yeah, I like what you said there too, though. I would be hesitant to take it from the airport because I wouldn't necessarily know where to go.
Where to get off. You run into the same situation in reverse. All right, so you're getting to the Hiroshima airport now, and you're flying to Ishigaki Island?
Yes, that was the plan there. And boy, that airport's tiny, Robert. It's so small. There's 3
Ishigaki
gates,
or Hiroshima or both?
Hiroshima, yeah.
Oh, wow.
It's 3 gates. They do have an international terminal. And this was the first moment of the trip where I was like, boy, we're like 7 days in on this trip. This could go really bad if there's an issue with my tickets or something happened and I didn't book it. I don't know. I booked it really obscure. Like, it was, I booked 2 different United accounts for 2 people. I had 2 record locator numbers. I kind of just sheepishly walk up to the ticket desk and I go, I don't know what to tell you, but I'm on this flight. Here's my information. And she's clicking away. Robert, the amount of keys that she typed, I mean, probably more than I would write an essay. Like, she's typing and typing and typing. And the more people type at a computer, this is the guilty conscience creeping in, I think. But, the more people type and type and type without saying anything, like the tension's building there. And, I'm just nervous. And so,
where did these United Miles come from? Tell me about your Chase profile.
I see that you've booked and canceled and then rebooked and canceled. And we also have you out of Osaka today. And, I don't know. And no, she prints everything out eventually. And, free domestic bags. maybe the flight was maybe 50% full, maybe not even. I mean, my wife had 3 rows all to herself. No, the experience could not be more different than domestic air travel here in the United States. I didn't need to show anything that like any ID to anyone. I never showed anyone any ID. Robert, I don't know how that worked. I really don't.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I just want to pause though. So much on, you sit around and you read boarding area blogs and you look at Flyer Talk or whatever everybody is doing today to get information on travel. And at some point, you're just entering 3-digit airport codes into something, right? But then you show up there, like, this actually works. I booked through United, and
I
there was
know.
a partner award. I'm flying ANA today, and there's an actual airport here, and humans working at it. And that crazy alliance results in me flying, for 8,000 United miles or something like that. It is pretty crazy how that works. I felt that flying from Bangkok to Phuket on a Life Miles award ticket.
I
But
remember
it
that
just
award
worked.
ticket.
It just worked.
Yeah, it's wild. And usually the thing that I'm thinking isn't going to work is me, like I'm flying to Melbourne, Florida instead of Melbourne, Australia or something on accident. Like
San Jose. There's a couple San Jose's out there. You got to watch out.
Exactly. That's another good one, right? Yeah. I was pretty sure that ISG was Ishigaki Island, but I never knew anybody that ever went there, And
There's a very real chance you could be going to not the place. I love that. That's, the familiarity with the call letters is just not there with the Ishigaki Islands of the world.
Yeah. So, it worked. It just worked. And
wait, so you connect back through Tokyo to get to Ishigaki Island, even though Hiroshima is closer?
No, I changed so I flew from Hiroshima to Okinawa. I had a connection to Okinawa.
Ah, gotcha.
And then Okinawa to Ishigaki. And Okinawa, man, I've never seen more orchids in my life than the Okinawa airport, Robert. There must have been 2,000 orchids in that airport. I don't know. It was unbelievable. And a strong spam presence on all of the Okinawa islands, I got to say. As a Hawaiian fan, I appreciate that. And my kids appreciated that as well. But we land, and this is another one of those things, Robert, where, turns out there are car rental companies on Ishigaki Island. There's a budget car rental on Ishigaki Island. And
oh, man.
But like foreign car rental companies, you got to go to like budget-ishigaki.co.jp or something. It's not showing when you go to budget.com. Yeah, loosely affiliated, name only, no benefits, none of that stuff, right? Until I landed there, I didn't know that there was even a budget there because I booked an Airbnb and then I asked my Airbnb host, where should I rent a car? And he said, that's easy. 2 doors down from me is a snorkel company that also rents cars, Jellyfish Car Rental. And I said, okay. And, back in January, I emailed this guy, Jellyfish, and said, I'm staying here these days. He goes, yeah, we'll pick you up. We'll be at the water fountain at Ishigaki Island on July 17th at, 1:30 in the afternoon. And I went, is this really going to work? It blew my, it was that end of, we talked about it on the show already before, but it was the end of Back to the Future 2 where Marty's standing there and this guy's holding an envelope from 1885 and he goes, yeah, you Marty McFly? And like, Robert, we get off this flight, we get our luggage, we walk out, the water fountain is right there, and lady standing right there with a Jellyfish Car Rental shirt on and says, I'm here to take you to your car.
Snorkels and cars. I love it.
It's just worked. Takes us to the Airbnb. We drop all our stuff. She says, I'm 2 doors down. Whenever you're ready, come over, get the car. I go, okay, I'll come over right now. I signed some paperwork, really official looking car rental paperwork. And Robert, in a 5-day car rental on Ishigaki Island, $210 out the door. It was half the price. I actually ended up pricing it on budget. It was half the price on budget. And it was right down 2 doors from me. They took me back to the airport when I was done. And, I experienced the joy of driving in Japan. So
they should open up a location in LAX. I'd frequent that business.
It's probably better than their LAX car rental experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
That island, we were definitely the only Americans on our flight in.
Yeah.
Definitely. The only Americans on our flight in. We did meet one other American on the island and some Canadians, but it's so, you mentioned it, it's so close to Taiwan, Robert, that when I initially landed, I had very little cash on me at that point. And I went, this island is a lot smaller than I thought it would be. I'm going to need cash. And so I started looking for 7-Elevens. And, I was finding 7-Elevens. It was telling me the closest 7-Eleven was in Taiwan. And yeah, and it's true. There wasn't any 7-Elevens on the island. There was a bunch of family marts, and that's where I ended up going to get cash. But
okay, very similar.
Yeah, but it was like we were looking for a special barbecue restaurant that was recommended, and it was pulling up things in the Philippines because it was closer. And so The island is not well traveled by Yelp reviewers or even Google reviewers.
Yeah.
The information on when things are opened and closed was really difficult to get. One of the overall trends of the entire country, I think, was the country does not open early for breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, my kids are up at 6 a.m., doesn't matter. They want to go eat breakfast and they want to go do stuff. And, we'd look in Kyoto or in Tokyo, there were very few places that were open. There were Starbucks that weren't even open at 8 a.m.
The whole premise of going to Ishigaki Island, where did that come from? I mean, my perception is you wanted something in a beach locale. Okinawa maybe to it's a bunch of Americans there is my perception, and you wanted to be a little bit more off the grid there. Was it too off the grid?
I don't think so. I don't think so. There were a couple moments where we had the Star Trek communication going, where I would talk into my phone and then hold it up to the person, and then they would talk into their phone and hold it up to me. And so it was like one of the few areas where there wasn't any English. But that was the exception. I mean, that wasn't everywhere on that island, but definitely, as you mentioned, right? Like as you move from Tokyo, you get less and less familiarity with things. It's more and more like the country that you're in. And so I liked that part of it. I liked the beaches. I thought the beaches were beautiful, and it was completely empty, Robert. And there's a whole side of the island that's super busy. It has an IHG Intercontinental. It has a couple other hotels. We were on the north side of this island, 20 minutes away from all of that. We'd walk over to our beach, 100 meters away, plop down. The kids, one of the great parts about this island is it must be ringed by a reef, because there are no waves anywhere on this entire island. I never saw a single wave, but you have this picturesque blue waters, white sand beaches. And so the kids could just walk out 100 feet and there's never a wave that's going to knock them over or anything. It's like a giant swimming pool. It was great. I loved it. The food, the Ishigaki beef, everything about that island was great, Robert. And I could have done another week there too. Now, I will say this. I wouldn't go there instead of going to Hawaii, right? If it's 5 hours to go to Hawaii or 18 hours and 2 transfers to go to Ishigaki, doesn't make any sense. But as a side trip and as a completely different way to change up this trip and give the kids a little bit of experience of the beach, and they've been walking like crazy for a week. It gave them time to just relax and recharge, and me too. I just plopped down and did nothing, and then at night the stars were out in the sky. It was super pitch black. I was able to see galaxy and just do nothing. It was wonderful.
But there was enough restaurants and stuff to do there. Like you said, there was an IHG. You also mentioned that there's a Club Med there too. So it is touristed, but not particularly where you were. Was there enough to do just in terms of interesting restaurants and the stuff that you do on vacation, or was it really truly just the Airbnb plus the beach? There were
plenty of restaurants. If we wanted to drive the 20 minutes, there was plenty of restaurants.
Okay. How was the driving?
It was interesting.
I'm
adjusting back, actually. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I've never rented a car where it's the other side of the road from what we're comfortable with. Manual transmission or automatic?
Automatic.
That helps.
It does help. Everything's reversed, but the location of the turn signals, and I'm just, even here, adjusting back, I'm hitting my windshield wipers instead of the turn signals all the time. So it was easy to drive because there were no people. And then once you get into the busier part of the island, I really did have some trouble. And so I cannot imagine driving in Kyoto or any other major city. I wouldn't do it. But long stretches of, it's driving. Yeah. So, but that was 5 nights there. And I don't know how much stuff anybody cares about that actually is there in Ishigaki. I'll list some stuff. I'll list some of the things that we did do on that island, but what amazes me about that, Robert, is the grocery store there. The prices were exactly the same as the rest of Japan. And so you travel to Hawaii and everyone, says, you got to ship everything here.
Milk.
And that's why everything's so expensive. Right. Like my kids love drinking milk. I go to the grocery store there and a quart of milk was $1.40 or 200 yen. It was 200 yen everywhere I went in the country. There really does seem to be a thing where they're not going to gouge you. They're not going to overprice you. They're going to price everything fairly, and it doesn't matter where you are. You're at the airport, a Coke is 200 yen.
Yeah.
You're at You're at a vending machine in the middle of nowhere. Coke is 180 yen or 200 yen. And I felt like it made it easy when you're on that island because it was so nice, very familiar too. You've got Family Mart, you've got same grocery store chains that are on the main part of Japan.
Well, the picture you sent me of that grocery store would look very, I went to a Japanese grocery store in the LA area when we were out there, and it looked very similar to that. I mean, it says delicatessen on the wall in big English letters.
Yeah.
Like, I know what that is.
Yeah, all this grab and go food, tons of great, breads. That became one of those things my kids got really into was every morning you go to the store on the corner and grab a bread and load up. And, it's like going to one of the 85-degree bakeries out here, but it's on every corner everywhere there. And they had that on the island. Everything that you wanted from, the main area was on that island. And you're still in Japan, which was really, really nice. And so maybe we'll do it again. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask a question about food, but before I get there, so if you went back to Japan and you wanted a Hawaii-like experience to give you that, relaxation while you're on vacation, would you research and find another island, or is Ishigaki probably you like that? You'd like to explore it more?
I'd like to explore it a little bit more. Yeah, there's a whole side that we didn't get to. Kids are a little too young for some of the things that I wanted to do. It's apparently one of the best scuba diving locations in the world, and one of the places you can see those giant 6-foot manta rays. So I didn't get to do that. And there's a lot of things, and just being out in the middle of nowhere. That's my thing.
One of your favorite things. It sounds even more remote than the area near Punamita where you stayed before. Did you get to contemplate the end of days when you were there?
I did, Robert. Yes, I did.
How's the report? What's the forecast? Is it coming soon?
I don't know about that, but I'm back here now, so hopefully not.
There you go. All right, so transiting back to Tokyo now. Return the rental car? How does this work?
I walk 2 doors down, I give them the keys, and then they drive me to the airport. Yeah, it was great.
Love it. All right, so JAL, ANA, is there other airlines there? How do you get from Ishigaki back to Tokyo?
Yeah, those are the two. Peach flies as well. Peach is a low-cost carrier that I looked at. I'm impressed by, if you want to take a trip down memory lane, Robert, you can take a domestic flight in Japan. It'll remind you of, pre-September 11th flights here. Free checked bags and, kind of like, no ID check. I mean, that was wild to me that again, you're flying domestic, but you assume you're going to have an ID check at some point. Yeah. I think they checked my wife's ID, but they didn't check mine or my kids when I got...
Just one in the group, you think, or what?
I don't know. I don't know what it was. I don't know. It was really interesting.
When you get on an Amtrak in the United States, it seems the same way. You just hop on. What? Nobody, put me through a metal detector. So many of our norms and customs are reactive to things that have happened in the past. And 9/11 is something that we've dealt with as a country, and they haven't had to deal with that over there, maybe. And it's just a lot more higher moral code kind of country than we have here. And fortunately, some things are frozen in time and haven't changed there yet. And I'm sure it was. What was your? We talked a lot about the nuts and bolts and the costs of things, though. I mean, what were your overall impressions of the country before we get to Tokyo? Just checkpoint here, and were you struck by what characteristics of it left you like when you came back? You're left thinking about. Yeah,
that's a great question. I think that maybe some people have painted the country of Japan with too narrow a brush. It's clean and it's very safe and. Yeah, but it's very busy, mm-hmm. You've got a huge country and it's very, very varied. It's one of the interesting things to me was to see how conventions like good morning and good afternoon and good evening were different over different parts of that country, mm-hmm. and how very formalized it was in Kyoto and how you get down to Ishigaki Island and it's just saimasu, like just really slang, like mm-hmm. really like letting everything kind of go. You see these photos of Tokyo and these crazy crossings and these, billboard lights and that's like 2 streets. Then you walk a couple streets down and it just looks like a little street, so it's not any one thing. I wouldn't go there expecting any one thing. And the other takeaway for me was that the general write-ups were really bad. People wrote these must-dos and must-sees and must experiences. And we did a couple things and we just realized, like, find your own everything. There's so much to explore, so much to do. Find the things that you like that you're interested in and do those things before you do someone else's list of stuff to do. You know, and I think the first day, maybe get oriented into a city and figure out kind of what you're interested in, or do some of that research before you get there and speak to some locals. Locals were really helpful. Especially I had 2 kids, and you know, some of the older people that we interacted with, those older people really were resonating to the kids and really helpful in sharing things to do and places to go. And who you are is going to dictate what you do. I don't think you're going to go to the Ueno Zoo, right, Robert? Like, it's just not going to be a thing you do. But for me, my 4-year-old, my 8-year-old, they loved it. It was fantastic. And that's the big takeaway. You know, any major city, any big country is going to have so many things for you that it's going to be impossible to see everything or do everything. Find what you like, and don't worry about what other people write about and say you should do or you have to see.
Yeah, you do see a lot of similarities. I mean, even like a location where you had a photo taken in Kyoto was like, I have the same photo in my collection here. Let me find it for you 1 second later. Like you know, Fushimi Inari and you know, this place at the Shibuya Crossing, right? There's like these things that aren't quite Statue of Liberty and Grand Canyon famous, but it's amazing the kind of circles that you might bump into if you kind of go with the crowd wisdom. So yeah, I like that. And you structured the trip to get off the beaten trail, and you did that. But you did wind up in Tokyo, your final destination here. Let me get this before I get to Tokyo. Tell me about the food, because I know a lot of people worry about the food, especially with young kids. Irrespective of young kids or not, picky eaters. There are adults who are picky eaters. How did you do with the food, knowing that you're more adventurous, I would say, than most? And how did you guys do in the food overall and with the kids?
We did great, but our kids really like Japanese food. I'm going to say this so that I can remember this in the future. I never thought I could get tired of Japanese food, but I did get tired of Japanese food after a while, Robert. And
tell us more about that.
Yeah, I live in California. Mm-hmm. And when I travel for a long period of time, I start to realize that I am a Californian. You know, that happened here in this country. You know, I went to Montana. I realized really quick in Montana I was a Californian. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think everybody in Montana realized I was a Californian really quick as well. But, you know, on this trip, I realized it when I struggled to find fruits. You know, we have so many fruits here in California all year long, usually locally grown, or we get them from, you know, imported from Mexico. And, you know, everywhere we went in the initial part of this trip, we told, we're going to Ishigaki Island. Oh my gosh, it's going to be so beautiful. And the fruit there, you're going to love it. And again, that's like the perspective of someone living in Japan, where it's actually tough to get fresh fruit. Maybe not impossible, but it's expensive, I would say. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we're used to buying like pounds of fruit, and everything is individually packaged into these small, individual, personal-sized packages. We get to the island, and quality versus what we get here doesn't really correlate, and so we're kind of thinking like, oh, I get it. Like, it's the idea that you can get these fruits here that you can't get in Tokyo or in Kyoto or in Hiroshima. You can't get pineapple anywhere else in the country, I guess, but they grow them like wild in Ishigaki. Guy in front of me at the farmer's market spent like $300 just on pineapple. And I'm thinking like, I get it. That's his souvenir that he's taking home to everybody, right? Yeah. Like this is novel. And it's like, look, I got you this pineapple, and I got everybody I know a pineapple. And I'm thinking like, the pineapple was really good, but I got pineapple everywhere here. Like, I can go to any store in LA and get a pineapple. I can get mangoes at any store in LA. You know, the mangoes were good, but again, it's just a different situation. And so that part started to get to me after a while, you know, fresh fruits and fresh vegetables.
I wonder why that is. Like, it was hard to find a salad in Tokyo and Kyoto. I found like at a restaurant. So when you say you were tired of Japanese food, you were longing for some of the interesting Southern California cuisine? Like, was it monotonous or what?
All of that, Robert, all of that. And, you know, like we tried eating as much different cuisine there as we could, you know, because that's not any one note that Japanese cuisine is. And I don't know how to put my finger on it, but, you know, we had a patron ask a similar question. Like, after a couple of weeks, I think it also has to do with just eating out too, Robert. You know, like every meal turns into like a longer, more dramatic thing than it needs to. And sometimes you're not super hungry, but you're eating anyway because someone in the group is hungry. Yeah. And everybody's coordinating their schedule the whole time, and eventually it just all piles up. And also I couldn't find good coffee, and this started bugging me after a while. Yeah. The food was great. I mean, I don't want to say it wasn't great. The food was great. And I know I'm already going to miss it, right? Like, miss it. I'm going to miss it here.
What things were the highlights? Like ramen or sushi, kind of common, but like there's interesting things beyond that I'm sure you explored. What were some of the highlights?
Well, the Ishigaki beef was really, really good. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What's really good.
I think you sent me a picture of that. It's kind of like a hibachi kind of thing. You cook it in front of you kind of situation.
Yep. And that's the place we went is run by the two brothers that raise the cattle themselves too. So just another level. And again, everything's so reasonably priced that, you almost feel bad because you're not tipping or anything. And you're like, this experience is blowing your mind.
Tell us about the no tipping and how nice that was.
It is, but like, again, right? Like these two guys, they raise a bunch of cattle. And I know I'm wrong. Right? They've priced it the way that they want to price it and they've got it all figured out and everything, right? But man, like they accommodated us on like a short notice. Then we came back the next day and they like way overdid it and they brought some stuff for the kids. And, like you feel almost like, well, how can I give you something to say thank you? Like I should have showed up with a gift. I should have brought them some fruit.
A pineapple.
Yeah, a pineapple. Like
something exotic like a pineapple.
But that's actually what I should have done in hindsight, because it would have been better to do that. And as part of that's a language barrier too. Like I wasn't able to communicate how much I appreciated what they were doing at some of these restaurants. And so there was that. That was a high point. My wife and I had our last dinner in Tokyo. We stumbled into yakitori in Ueno, and that was really good. And just, along the way, you're just eating really fresh fish, a lot of octopus. I love octopus. My kids love octopus. So that was a really, really strong, the seafood on this trip. Some scallops that were just, I'm going to miss that. I'm going to miss all that stuff. I know I am, Robert. But then I came home and I had In-N-Out Burger because I was like, I got to do it,
I don't think you're alone in wanting a burger after coming back. I don't know what it is. There's just such a lack of, I guess they say you can find like good, pizza and burgers and other things like that. And not that you eat even a lot of that when you're here at home, but there's a lot of, you're not the first I've heard that wanted In-N-Out Burger or something similar to first thing when they got home after a couple weeks.
There is variety, right? I'm walking by Indian restaurants. I'm walking by all kinds of different world restaurants. It's not home. You miss home and you miss having your kitchen stocked with the things that you like, and some of those, like, Robert, I was at one of those big department stores in Japan. They had a whole floor of just U.S. foods and beverages, and I get it. It's like going, like you went to that Japanese grocery store here in Santa Monica to get the things that are back home from there, and so I could probably make it work, but it's a lot more work than just coming home and having what you want here. So
yeah. Well, it sounded like the trip was pretty exciting in Tokyo. You sent some pictures of like super cool, high energy places, and then you go 2 streets off of it, you're in a little alley, and it's got some like a row of intriguing looking restaurants. How did you like Tokyo, especially to end up the trip?
I liked it. It gave us some energy to end the trip. Needed more time, and I thought that the transit there was really easy. It was a little rougher around the edges than I expected it to be.
Mm-hmm.
I saw trash on the streets, Robert.
Whoa.
Yeah. Now, part of that is I'm up early, I think, before everything gets kind of cleaned up, maybe. Like one of the things that bugged me, and again, this is me, but I've got 2 kids. You can't walk and eat. You're not supposed to,
Yeah, I've heard that.
So you're not supposed to walk and eat, and I get that. And I did see, like, locals. I saw people doing that, walking and eating, but it was very, very few people.
Yeah.
And so, out of respect, I didn't want to do that. So, hey, you buy something, and there's a place to sit and eat, usually. And the kids wanted an ice cream. So I pop into 7-Eleven, grab an ice cream, right? Because they're everywhere. And they have, like, a seating area, and the kids are eating their ice cream, and my wife looks over my son's shoulder, and there's, like, all these, like, adult magazines right next to the seating area. and like, I get it. Like, we're in a big city. I get it, but, like, wasn't what I was expecting when people tell you, like, oh, it's so, like you even said, I don't have no problem with my son's going, right? Okay, but you can't, like, turn off your awareness, and you can't, like you just have to like still be on edge for certain things. And like even you're going in those streets, there's people standing in front of every one of these restaurants. Come on in, come on in, come on in. It's like, it felt like, Vegas-y almost, like,
wow.
Not like Vegas, but you're not going to go anywhere in Kyoto and have people standing in front of restaurants going, come on, are you guys, come on, hey.
Right, right.
Like it's not going to happen, but it's this, I think it's 40 million people in Tokyo, right? Like, I mean, but
you can find a lot of different neighborhoods, and
yes,
yeah.
But then you go to like you recommended checking out other areas. I go to Ginza. That's not happening in Ginza. It's not.
Yeah.
There's nobody standing in front of those restaurants doing that. And so it's been said it's a patchwork of neighborhoods. Tokyo's all these neighborhoods, and hey, as an LA person, I understand that. I totally get that. LA is a patchwork of neighborhoods as well. You got to find the neighborhood that resonates with you. You got to stick with it. And I loved the energy personally. I really embraced it. High energy, a lot of people. I liked it for 1 day or 2 days. It would have drove me nuts after a while. I would have needed variety. But that city has whatever energy you're looking for. You just got to know that and look for it and find it, I think.
All right. You glossed over the flights earlier, and that's one of the things that people probably spend 80% of the time on frequent flyer blogs trying to figure out how to get there and back. We've seen this come and go. We've been covering this space for a long time, and I think we talked about the paid show. Could you redo the trip that you just took? If somebody's listening to this and they're inspired to go, what's the outlook? I'm rebooking for the third time here myself, and it's very difficult. And I'm thinking of counseling family from the western part of the country, probably through LA. How did you book it? And with an eye towards what's replicable, or what would you do if you had to try to advise the family of 2 or 4 to how to get there again?
I would say you got to be very flexible on dates or in cabin of service. If you can fly economy, you probably can go any day you want. That's part of it. Repositioning, I hate to bring it up, but there's probably better options out of San Francisco than LA. There just are more options.
I mean, if somebody's flying from anywhere other than San Francisco or LA, you're going to have to reposition. Good to know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and be flexible on Haneda and Narita between those. Sure. Don't forget the Osaka flights, and there's some weird routes into Osaka. I think they fly it from San Diego, and you got to try whatever you can. Yeah, connecting Honolulu if you have to. I mean, if you really want to go to Japan, you got to make some concessions at this point. Pay more in mileage, than you maybe want to. I mean, if I'm going to go back to Japan, I want to do what you did. I want to go in the spring or maybe the fall, even so one of the things we did is, and we do this from time to time on our trips, is we hired a photographer to take family portraits in and around Kyoto of us. And he said, it's pretty rare for people to come here in the summer. And he says, I do a lot of work in the spring, of course, for cherry blossom season. But he said, if you ever want to come on a beautiful time, come in the fall. He said, the fall colors, and he really got us interested in coming in the fall, but I don't have a vacation slot in the fall.
I was thinking even flying with AA or United Metal or something like that. Something that I haven't considered because they don't fly here, but yeah.
You're still going. I think those are all great ways to do it. It's not replicable right now unless you can drop everything to leave tomorrow. Because I think there are some situations where people are holding or canceling, or they flew out. I shared with you, JAL, 5 seats empty in business, representing almost 25% of the business cabin, just empty. Like one I could understand for crew rest, but the other 4, they just didn't let them go.
Well, that's the thing I'm not seeing. It used to be traditional, that things would open up early, and that is,
yes.
I monitor the flight out of Boston all the time. I don't see them releasing seats, and I know there's seats there.
Yeah, that's the issue. I think that I get it. Look, you've been closed for a long time. You're trying to make some money as an airline. They flew these empty planes. I think they did for years, and they control the resource, and we want it. It's a limited resource. So I hate to say go somewhere else, but that's also an option, right? Like the country of Japan is going nowhere anytime soon, Robert. So while it's important to go, one of the big takeaways from this is it took us 3 years to get there. It was worth the wait. And, it was a successful trip, and it'll be a successful trip. Whenever anybody gets there, it'll still be a great country because it's a great country to go to. And, if the exchange rate goes a little higher or a little bit lower, not a big deal. I mean, that's not, like you said, Robert, we got to talk about what materially is going to affect you. And so if isn't the year to go to Japan, it isn't the year to go to Japan. It doesn't mean it'll never be the year.
Yeah. I know we'll be watching the award trends there closely, just out of personal interest, looking to book it again. It sounds like I might be a little bit more obsessed with Japan than you after my first trip, because I was booking that second one after the first one was done, and I'm booking the third one already. Maybe I'm just getting to be an oldster, and I'm like, yep, I got it all figured out. I want to go to Japan, Europe, Italy a lot, France maybe, go domestically. What's the takeaway from here? Yeah, did it exceed expectations? Did it meet expectations? Are you looking to go to places you haven't been, or where does a return trip to Japan fall on the depth chart for you?
I think it's doable. I mean, I would definitely go back. Robert, an interesting thing. I might have stayed there, even after you go there 3 times, I might have been there longer than you've been there.
True, yeah.
And I think that has something to do with it too, right? Like you scratch an itch, really, really scratch it, then you can wait a little while till it comes back. I think we'll be back to Japan, but there's so many other places to check on our demand schedule. If it works out, it works out. I think keep an eye on it and set some alerts with some of the services that we've talked about. And I think that's been a change for me. If the alerts hit for somewhere else, I'll go somewhere else first. And one of our patrons was in Tokyo while I was there, and he went to Tokyo Giants game. I would have loved to have done that. There were a lot of things that I would have loved to have done that I think a little difficult to do with my kids' age. I would have loved to have done more diving opportunities in Ishigaki Island. I would have loved, they have a world-renowned observatory there that hosted like middle of the night stargazing parties on their telescope. I would have loved to have done that. My kids are sleeping. I just can't. There are other things to do there that I didn't get a chance to do, and I'd love to come back, but when will I ever be able to go in the fall? And when will my kids be old enough that I can do other things that I couldn't do this trip? Because that will start to bug me. Like if I'm going again and missing out on the same things that I missed out this time, I need good coffee, Robert. I need somewhere with good coffee. What do we got? What's good coffee? I think I'm going to Australia. They got good coffee down there, right?
Do they? I don't know. Europe? Colombia? I don't know.
Colombia. Go to the source, Robert. Yeah. Colombia is beautiful, though. I mean, that's the issue. The issue is the world is huge. And how blessed are we to be able to get this is the miracle, too, Robert, right? Like, I press buttons on the computer at my house here in California. Somebody picked me up at Ishigaki Airport. I mean, it just, after getting into tubes that fly through the air, the whole thing is mind-blowing. And I'm experiencing parts of the world in ways that like 99.9% of the world inhabitants have never been able to do before. Yeah. And you got to get out there and just do that, because this is one of the great joys in life, I think, is experiencing how different everything can be, but how similar it can be. Like I'm sitting in this cat robot shabu shabu restaurant, and I'm like, oh, this is cool. There's not too many people here. And then, like I said, like high school must have let out or whatever. Everybody decided to go to the mall because it was at the mall, and they go to this restaurant. And I'm telling you, it's like I'm watching the same exact thing happen at any school-aged group of kids. And it's just great to remember how similar everybody can be.
Yeah, that's a great way to tie it off. I'm sure we'll be talking about our future travels. And I like it the way you're open to other countries, because that puts you in a much more dignified position than I am, desperately refreshing the JAL website. Please open up space.
What would you do? Would you fly premium economy?
Maybe some people in the group, not me.
Okay, yeah. What about stopovers? Would you do a stopover somewhere or a connection?
On the outbound, yeah, I think I could be talked into that on the outbound, especially if I could do 2 in first, 2 in business.
And they don't have that first class cabin out of Boston anyway, so
that's right.
You'd have to, yeah.
But it's
so
tough.
Where are you at? You've got 3 seats, 2.5.
Yeah, 2.5. Right, I haven't committed to that third one because I can't find anything on the return. But yeah, no, it's tricky. No, we're going to talk a lot about that on the page show, how to piece that together bit by bit, and hopefully get to the full allotment of the flights you need, and don't leave anybody at home. But yeah, it's a harder puzzle to ever solve. My wife thinks that I want to go there just because it's a fun puzzle to solve. I'm like, I can assure you, I like to solve other kinds of puzzles. I really do like Japan, and I think it's a great country, and I think you had a positive impression of it. But yeah, you appropriately couched it with some things that were different from the prevailing wisdom, and that's something I think we do a lot on the page show, especially.
Yeah, that's a great point, Robert. Should we close it out?
Let's do it. Yeah, thanks for your time. You coming back from your vacation and talking to us with less than 24 hours after you got off the plane. I'm sure you're a little tired and sleepy, but you performed admirably on the show. So thanks for sharing your trip report with us. And thanks for listening. Thanks for joining us this week. For a more in-depth discussion about points and miles, visit us at patreon.com/Milenomics. There you'll get a special link to listen to additional content right in your mobile podcast app or on your computer, where we speak more freely about topics like these.
As always, you can reach us on Twitter. I'm at Milenomics and Robert's at Robert Dwyer. Love to hear from you. Until then, we'll see you on the site.